Aloha and welcome to Action Island. I am Gilles Gallant with Action Network. We are back for Thursday Night Football between the Broncos and the Chargers. And of course, I'm joined with my two favorite Islanders, Nick Giffen and Sean Koerner. And the three of us, we're going to give our two best bets for tonight's Thursday Night Football matchup. So here's how it works. Two picks each from us. They're going to be our best bets. And then we're going to vote on those picks. By the end of the show, we're going to have a nice three-leg same game parlay for you. We'll get it real tropical for you. But first up, before we give out our picks, if you want access to all of Action Pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription to Action Pro. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Koerner, other members of the Action Analytics team. It's got a really cool tool for anytime touchdown projections, which has been crushing it lately. You also get access to our best spread, money line, and total bets, along with real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today. Use code ISLAND20 at sign up. One more time, that's ISLAND20 at sign up for $20 off. All right, Nick, we're looking at a matchup between the Chargers and Broncos. And what are your two best bets for this game?
Yeah, well, if you took a look at my game guide on the actionnetwork.com homepage or, front page of the Action app, you'll see I was looking at the under in this game, but the totals come down for sure. So let's look at some player props. First one, which I talked about in the game guide, is Quentin Johnston. I'm going to take under 3.5 receptions. This is an interesting spot because Ladd McConkey, of course, rookie wide receiver here for the Chargers, is the go-to guy, and he lines up in the slot around 70% of the time. So that means Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer will be outside a lot. And of the two, even Josh Palmer drifts into the slot more. So Quentin Johnston going to be outside. Well, what that's going to do, Broncos cornerback Pat Surtain will be on Quentin Johnston a lot tonight. He could be on Palmer a bit. When Ladd McConkey drifts outside, he could be on McConkey. But I'd say for the bulk of the snaps, Surtain is going to cover Quentin Johnston here. So that's really going to hurt. And the Broncos also generate pressure at the second highest rate in the NFL. And Quentin Johnston's target rate absolutely plummets when Herbert is under pressure. He's been targeted on just 7.5% of his routes run when Herbert is pressured. So not good in terms of potential target volume for Johnston. And those targets also, when he's pressured, come downfield. So lower catch rate as well. And we also know QJ has some drop issues as well. Also, the Broncos blitz at the fifth highest rate in the NFL. Quentin Johnston does get targeted more per route versus the blitz, but it's a little less than 7% more, whereas Ladd McConkey jumps to around 11% more when Herbert is blitzed. So even then, Ladd is the preferred target as well. And one other little wrinkle, the Broncos' other outside cornerback, Riley Moss, is going to be out. So with Surtain probably covering Quentin Johnston, that could lead to more options here for Josh Palmer, maybe some of the other Chargers wide receiver ancillary options, because we'll be facing Riley Moss's backup here. So potentially a better matchup as well for those ancillary wide receivers. All right, so my second pick here is going to be on the Denver Broncos side of the ball, and I'm going to take Audric Estime over 26.5 rushing yards. This is a spot where I definitely want to target the Broncos run game because the Chargers are 16th in defensive DVOA versus the run compared to 7th versus the pass. So the Broncos may lean run heavy here. And also the Chargers, they allow the 13th highest fraction of the total plays they face to be explosive runs. So runs of 10 yards or more. And in passes, they actually allow the 12th fewest fraction of total plays to be explosive passes. So they're, again, much better in terms of preventing big plays versus the pass than they are versus the run. So Estime could rip off a big run or two here and clear this even with just a handful of carries. But I think actually he's in line for possibly a decent workload given Javonte Williams has been struggling, not very productive at all, running for just 2.7 yards per carry over his last 7 games. Estime, 4 yards per carry over that same time frame. So I like Estime to have a chance to break a couple runs against this Charger defense.
Okay, so we're looking at a backup running back Estime with Jaleel McLaughlin out for the over on his rushing yards around 26.5, or we're going to be fading Quentin Johnston in a man-heavy matchup under 3.5 receptions. So Sean, let's take a vote. Are we voting on Quentin Johnston under or Audric Estime over on his rushing yards? All right, Sean, I'm gonna fade QJ on this one, man. I don't know. I don't want to take Quentin
Same.
Johnson. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so we're on the same page here. All we like Quentin Johnson fade here in this game, potentially matching up with Patrick Surtain under 3.5 receptions will be the first leg of the same game parlay. So I've got a bet on each side. I'm going to be taking an anytime touchdown and an over on receiving yards. So the first bet that I like is Cortland Sutton for an anytime touchdown. I've loved betting on this guy for anytime touchdowns, especially when he's at 2-1 or better. He's got 6 touchdowns this year, leads the team with 19 red zone targets. That's actually ninth overall in the NFL. So Bo Nix is targeting him when they get to the red area. He also leads the team in ADOT. And the Chargers, I know Nick kind of said that the explosive play rate on passes has kind of still been pretty good overall, but lately they've been a little vulnerable on that front from the deep pass because the Chargers, they rank first in defensive DVOA versus the short pass, but they've dropped all the way now to 20th versus the deep ball. And one of our favorite guys to bet on for touchdowns, Mike Evans, he went off on them last week for 2 long touchdowns. One of them was over 50 yards, another one over 40. And now the Chargers have allowed 5 receiving touchdowns of 30 yards or more over the last 5 games, which should be able to help Sutton on some of those deep, longer throws. And then, of course, they've allowed 16 touchdowns to wide receivers. That's bottom 5 in the NFL. So Cortland Sutton, anytime touchdown is the first option. But on the other side, on the Chargers side, I'm looking at another Chargers receiver, and I'm keeping with the Canadian content here. Josh Palmer, over 28.5 receiving yards. He has cleared this in 8 of 13 games this year. He's averaging 38 receiving yards per game, and he tends to excel a little bit more against man defenses. And the Chargers played 7 games this year where teams that play man defense at a top 10 rate, so that would be the Broncos, the Chiefs twice, the Browns, the Saints, the Ravens. And he's gone over this 28.5 yard line in each of those games, averaging close to about 46 yards per game against man loaded defenses. And he's got a 20+ yard catch in each of those games, too. So I think we could see some long receptions for Josh Palmer here on this Broncos secondary. And as Nick pointed out, Palmer will likely avoid the Surtain matchup. He does play in the slot about 30% of the time. So Josh Palmer over 28.5 receiving yards, or we're going to be taking Cortland Sutton for an anytime touchdown. Gentlemen, it's time to vote. All right, Nick, Sean, did we vote for a Sutton anytime touchdown, or are we going to take Josh Palmer to get to over 29.5 receiving yards?
Yeah, I fumbled. I fumbled my card. I had to get it off the floor, but
Palmer.
going Palmer here.
A little Ernie Palmer early this afternoon. All right, so we're going with Josh Palmer over 29.5 receiving yards. So we're going to pair that with Quentin Johnson under 3.5 receptions. So we're kind of getting a little bit of correlation there with fading one and going for the other. So those are the first 2 legs of the 3-leg same game parlay. So now, Sean, it is your turn. What are your 2 bets for Thursday Night Football?
All right, so for my first one, I'm going to go with Devon Vele over 32.5 receiving yards. This is actually my official prop for this game, over 30.5. It's somewhere between 32.5, 34.5 at most books, but I still like his over here. I think this is a good buy low opportunity. Just he's coming off a brutal 2-game stretch where he just has 1 catch for 16 yards, but there's a ton of reasons for that. I kind of lay it out in my article. But the Broncos are 2.5 3-point dogs tonight, so I project them to trail at a 10% higher rate than usual this season. So I think they'll be a little bit more pass heavy here, and this is a great matchup for Vele specifically because the Chargers use zone coverage at the second highest rate, and that's really where Vele thrives. He's only averaging just 0.3 yards per route against man coverage, while averaging 1.8 against zone. Similarly, the Chargers also use press coverage at the lowest rate in the league, and Vele's averaged 1 more yard per route run against off coverage versus press coverage. So there's a lot of schematic reasons to like him tonight. Plus, following the release of Josh Reynolds, it's made this the receivers outside of Cortland Sutton easier to project every week. Vele's going to be out there for around 65% of Bo Nix dropbacks. And based on that, I'm getting a median closer to 37.5 here. So still like the over here at 32.5 receiving yards. And for my second one, going to have some fun here and pivot to our our touchdown prop tool that you mentioned earlier, Jill, but I'm going with Stone Smart to score a touchdown here at plus 550. My projections have him closer to plus 400. So I like the value we're getting here. He's yet to score a touchdown this year, but he's only really been the lead tight end for one game now. Will Disley missed his first game of the season last week, so Smart took over as lead tight end. Hayden Hurst is expected to return tonight, but he had lost his job as the lead tight end to Disley, a few weeks before he even got hurt. So I think he might return to a limited role, and Smart will probably still be the lead tight end for the Chargers tonight. I think he's looked solid. So, I don't expect him to have, a huge game against a man-heavy defense like the Broncos, but when they get in the red zone, his 6'4" frame, I think, will be a valuable asset for Herbert in the red zone. So I think he's sneaky here with a touchdown at plus 550.
The Sean likes to have fun. He's taking an over and an anytime touchdown prop. I don't know why people keep thinking that we just want to take unders here on this show
Who
here.
the hell says that? That's
I don't know, but whoever they are, they're full of it. So, all right. So, Nick, we got to vote now. We're going to be looking at Devon Vele over 32.5 receiving yards, or we could have a little bit more fun and take Stone Smart touchdown at plus 550. So let's take a vote, Nick. All right, Nick, I went with the Simpsons reference, SMRT or smart. What did you take? Vele. All right, so Vele is the third leg of the same game parlay. So let's recap this, guys, because we kind of went over this very quickly here. But Quentin Johnston under 3.5 receptions is the first leg of the same game parlay. That's from Nick. I took Josh Palmer over 29.5 receiving yards. We're going to talk about that more in a second. And then Devon Vele over on the receiving yards is the third leg of the same game parlay. If you put all three of those together, that parlay comes out to around plus 475 at Bet365. But I wanted to just mention this, that the Palmer and Vele receiving yard lines are just slightly different at two different books. So if you're looking more for Palmer 31.5 receiving yards, because that's what it's at Bet365, you could get it at 29.5 at FanDuel. Now the catch is that you have to take over on 34.5 receiving yards for Vele as opposed to 32.5 at Bet365. I think both of them are decent options. I just wanted to lay that out for any viewers who maybe you don't have access to every single sports book in the state or you're in or whatever, but at least this way you'll still be able to get that kind of cushion. So before we get out of here, Nick, what do you think of these three props and how they correlate for tonight's game?
Yeah, I love them. I love all three of them. If you are in the Action Network Discord, first of all, why aren't you? Second of all, I gave out the Devon Vele most receptions of the game prop at 15-1 at FanDuel. I think that's down to 10-1 or so now. But I think this is a good volume spot for Vele as well. And I talked about that as well in my game guide. So right there with Sean, talked about, Palmer with, your pick there. I kind of talked about it, alluded to it in my pick. So I think we're in good shape here. Just comes down to whether Quentin Johnston is able to clear that 3.5 receptions prop or not. Hopefully not for us.
Well, either way, you're a company man because you made sure to plug the Action Network Discord. So that's where a lot of our picks and stuff and analysis will be. A lot of watch along. We're usually in there talking up props and whatnot. So let's recap this parlay one more time before we get out of here. Quentin Johnston under 3.5 receptions. Josh Palmer over on his receiving yards and Devon Vele over on his receiving yards. You could get that at plus 475 at Bet365 or around plus 455 at FanDuel. So that is all for us. I want to thank you for watching Action Island for Broncos Chargers. On behalf of Nick Giffen, Sean Koerner, I'm Gilles Gallant. Aloha and bon chance.